Got a coffee. I'm back. So, for me, it's emotional that he's gone. I think that it's really emotional because what I'm going to continue to tell you is, it's hard to say. I don't think it's okay. I don't think that it's okay, any of this about like the healthcare system. And so from that part of the story, like it's like raw and emotional, and it's maddening in a lot of ways, but I have to just, as a Christian, I have to forgive. I have to forgive doctors and nurses from either following protocol or not knowing Christ and not having the heart of Christ, because without that, we can't truly be the people that we need to be. We can't be the compassionate people that God intends us to be. Lots of people are just in the medical industry for money, and there's some sweet, beautiful people that God uses in the medical industry to love on people, and that's their gift. Okay, so my husband goes to the hospital. That's Friday night. Saturday, I don't remember. I did not go. I went down Saturday. I did go down. I went down Saturday for part of the day. Mind you, I still have all these children at the house, and I was trying to make things as normal as possible for them. And so I went down for a little bit on Saturday, and I wanted to know what was going on. What was going on with him? Nobody could tell me anything that was going on with him except to expect that he's going to die. I'm like, but he was just normal less than a week ago. What's going on? Well, all of our tests are coming back fine. He had chest x-rays, he had heart monitors, he had all this stuff, and everything supposedly was fine. There was nothing wrong with him, except that he had carbon in his oxygen, which, now knowing, I did not know this then, that is then for him in his Duchenne's muscular dystrophy would mean that he would need to be on a more extensive ventilation system during the daytime. He was on a BiPAP at nighttime. It would mean that he would need extended ventilation like throughout the day as well, to help him keep the amount of oxygen that needed to be flowing into his lungs. That is what was wrong with him. So I'm like, I do not understand why he can't even wake up. What is going on? Why can't you tell me what is going on? They're like, we don't know. Just, expect for him to die. And so they wanted me to sign a do not resuscitate. I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that at this point. I want to know what is going on. I said, I know, and Bobby and I had talked about this. I knew that he wanted ventilation was fine. That was part of his disease. He was at some point going to need additional ventilation. So there's a difference between needing ventilation and like getting the paddles if his heart had stopped. They would not allow me to say that. It was either all or nothing. So I kind of left it open because I really didn't know what God wanted me to do. So I left that open, and I ended up going home that night. I was 7 months pregnant, and I had a 1-year-old who was really emotional, and I had some other children that were really emotional. They all saw their brother like this, and the day before they were all playing with their brother, and they didn't understand. And I had no answers for them. I had absolutely no answers for them. So one of the doctors at the hospital was telling me that we all know that it's sad when people die. My grandmother, no, yes, was it grandmother or mother? I forget. It was either grandmother or mother, who was 96 years old, passed away. And I was so devastated, but we have to let them go. There is a huge difference in a person who has been alive for 93 years and are on the natural slope down. We're all on a natural slope down. We're all going to die sometime. And a 23-year-old boy who was just fine last week as far as stable in his condition. There's a huge difference. I just want to know what the heck happened. I needed to know what happened in order to be able to move forward in my brain what was going on. But all the doctors and nurses were basically just telling me to get over myself, and I just needed to be ready for him to die. I said, so they're waiting for a bed in a big city hospital and have not received a bed yet. So we're basically just sitting here waiting for a bed. He did at this point have pressurized oxygen on him and that brought his oxygen levels correct. So that was Saturday. Sunday morning, I get a call about 8 o'clock in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, something like that. And my husband is trying to remain calm, but I can't understand. And he was like, is he a do not resuscitate? Is he a do not resuscitate? I don't know what to tell them. And I said that he just had a seizure, and he was having a seizure, and he didn't know what to say. And I said, no, he's a full code until all my kids get to come and say goodbye. A neighbor came and brought me down to where our van was. I dug it out of the snow with the neighbor. And so we dug the van out of the snow. I pulled out of there. I ran back to my house. I packed everyone in the van. I don't even know if I had enough seatbelts, to be honest with you, because we usually drive 2 vehicles because we can't all fit in. And I didn't even take the time to count if we had enough seatbelts. It's so horrible. But we all had to get to the ER. And by that time, he was stable. And so everyone just kind of gathered around him and prayed over him and sang to him. We had talked before, like how he wanted, if things got bad, how he wanted to be, and he wanted to be home and having people read him scripture and pray and sing. And it was so hard, and to be rejoicing that he was going to go be with the Lord. And this just felt so sudden, and we didn't really know what was going on, and the doctors didn't seem to be helpful at all. I mean, this is not anxiety, anymore. Why was it anxiety for all this time? And why were things like this way? So everyone got to say goodbye. I tried to get my oldest son to, I guess he came there with his wife. I did not see him at that point, but I really wanted him to be able to come in and say goodbye, because they were like best buds. And I knew he was hurting. So I wanted him to have that opportunity to come in and say goodbye, but he chose not to. And as an adult, everyone has that choice. And so we just went on about the day. I was just reading a scripture to him. We had some great friends from Tennessee that were sending scripture because honestly, my brain couldn't even think. I couldn't even think to say like what my favorite scripture was. I couldn't think like where in the Bible, where in the Bible do I read anything to him? What do I do? Just open it up and start reading, you know? And that's basically what I was just doing. But friends from Tennessee, they were praying, so like I would put the prayers and stuff like out loud, like so Bobby could hear them. I was also they were also reading a scripture and just messages, and like I was reading all those things to him, and I couldn't even tell you unless I look back, like I couldn't tell you what they say. I just know that I just kept reading it over and over, and I kept reading scripture and praying and talking to him. And so at this point we have another doctor that's on. Now I have been asked at least 20 times to sign an order, do not resuscitate at this point. This is 1:00 in the afternoon. And I just felt in my heart that I'm okay signing that if I know what's going on. It's not that I'm saying like, I know that my son has this disease, right? I know at some point he's going to die. We're all going to die. It's more important if we know where we're going when we die than if we're going to die, because we're all going to die. But it was like the point of I wanted to know what was going on. So I was asked all these times, time after time. It was so ridiculous. So then around 1:00, they had brought him in for a CAT scan. And during the CAT scan, they found out that he had pancreatitis as well as pneumonia, two things that he did not have 2 days prior. So he has these two things, the pancreatitis and the pneumonia. And so they tell me this, and I'm sitting there in the chair, and they're like, now will you sign the do not resuscitate? And I was like, I don't know. So I'm looking up, of course, Googling pancreatitis. At this time, I had also requested to be part of a group of other Duchenne's parents. And so I was chatting back and forth with these people, and they're like, I was chatting back and forth with this nice gentleman who was like, I don't know, I think he's like 40, no, 30s, something like that. An older Duchenne's person. He showed me his whole setup for his for his new ventilation and all this type of stuff. So then I'm like, this kid just needs more ventilation. And these other things, such as, pneumonia and pancreatitis and stuff, like those things are curable. I'm not saying that people never die of them. I'm not saying that at all, but they could be a curable disease. So then the doctor comes in and they said, are you ready to sign a do not resuscitate? And I said, are you starting him on antibiotics? And they're like, oh, yes, we can do that. I just don't understand this. I feel like as a doctor, your job isn't to make that decision of if you feel like this child or this man or this woman or whoever it is worth it. Your job is to try to save that person. He was 23 years old. So they start him on antibiotics at 3:00. Meanwhile, I'm talking to a couple people and on this Duchenne's group, and she says, contact this specific person. So I contact this specific person, and this person says he qualifies for a pediatric bed. They should already know that. There's open pediatric beds at the hospital that we're looking at. So I said, okay. So she says, let me talk to the doctor. The doctor's missing in action, won't talk to this lady. So then he comes back in asking me to sign this do not resuscitate. Now, in the meantime, I had said, well, I guess before we actually started the antibiotics, I said, okay, well, I guess if there's no hope, like whatever. And then once I Googled it, then I was like, well, aren't we starting him on antibiotics? So I did at that time before the antibiotics, when they were saying, like, don't you want to sign do not resuscitate? I said, yes, if there's no hope, then I guess then I will say, I verbally said, do not resuscitate. I do not sign anything. So they said, so can't find the doctor anywhere to talk to this lady about the bed. So then I hang up with the lady and she says, well, you can always just have him call and say that this doctor will refer him to, because you had to have a referring doctor from the hospital that was going to take him in. So the guy comes in and I tell him that we have a referring doctor and all this type of stuff, and he can have a pediatric bed, blah, blah, blah. If you need to contact anyone, it's this person and this person. You can contact either of those people. He said, well, did you tell them that you have a do not resuscitate on him? And I said, no, why would I? Because if he has a do not resuscitate, then we can't transfer him. I said, what? Then why would you have me sign a do not resuscitate or say that it was do not resuscitate? I said, he's like, well, that's just how things work. And I was like, I looked him in the face and I was like, then make him a full code. So then he comes back again. He's like, well, I can't get in contact with anyone. I said, then I will call them on my cell phone and you can talk to them on my cell phone. So I call the person and it's like a type of system, like you call like the main system and then that person has to transfer you over and then that person had to transfer you over to whatever. So in between those times, there's a couple minutes. So it took maybe 10 minutes from me making the phone call to actually like talking to somebody. And so he says, I don't have time for this. 5 minutes in, doesn't have time for this. So he, so he walked out of the room. I get somebody on the phone and he's missing in action again. I was so mad. I walked out and I walked into the waiting room. And I started to feel really, really bad, like physically, because mind you, I'm 7 months pregnant. I don't think I've eaten that day. I don't even know. I don't even know what I've drank. I think I've had a couple cups of coffee. I don't really know. And I call my midwife and I explain the situation. Now, I have a home birth midwife, so she like is super awesome and she was totally there and she's like, okay, ask them if they can just get you like some orange juice and whatever. So then a nurse comes out while I'm on the phone with her in the waiting room, and a nurse comes out and she goes, I don't know how you did it, but you did it. And so she says, we got him a bed. We got to get him ready to go to life flight. So I'm like, oh, awesome. So I get in there. Now he's been on antibiotics for 2 hours now. He's totally alert. He's looking at me. He's like acknowledging what I'm saying. Like I can feel like in his soul, like because he's been disabled and he didn't like talk a lot, I could almost read his eyes. And I know that anyone who has like a disabled child, you can read their eyes to know like what's going on. And he was there. He was totally there. So I'm like, wow. So I'm trying to talk to him and read him the things that I had read him all day over again about the people praying for him and just loving on him. And me and Dad were just like putting our hands on him and praying for him and talking to him. And then the doctor comes in and he's like, I heard that you said that I forced you to sign a do not resuscitate. And I said, well, you didn't force me. Nobody took my hand. and forced me to do anything. And he says, "I never forced you, and nobody should ever feel," and that's a bad accusation to be making. Okay, you asked me over 25 times to sign a do not resuscitate. I think that's pretty insistent. So then he goes on his huge spiel to make himself feel better that he did not force me to sign the do not resuscitate. Meanwhile, I wanted to be spending time with my son who actually could see me, who knew me, who could hear my voice. And he's just blah, 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 blah about the do not resuscitate crap. And I am like a kind person, and I wanted to just be like, shut up. And I did not say that. I didn't say it. I should have. If I could go back, I'd tell him to shut up. Anyway, it was making me feel all nervous because he was like intimidating me. And then he brings other nurses. Did I ever say this? How many times did I say this? Like in his professional authority type of voice, you know? And it was just ridiculous. It's like, those are the last precious moments that I could have with my son. You took them away. My son was back. I could feel him back. His eyes were back. His heart was back. He was back. So Life Flight gets in there and they start doing their thing. So they're stripping the blankets and everything off of him to get ready to load him up. And they need to take his temperature. His temperature was so low, they couldn't get a temperature on him. Nobody had ever come in to bring hot blankets. They had not come in to warm him up. They had not done any of that. I could tell she was mad. She acted very professional, but I could tell she was mad. Had to take a rectal temperature of him. I can't even remember now what it was. I think it was like 95 or something like that. It was low. So she was like bundling up. She's like, more blankets. She kept yelling, more heated blankets. Put more in the warmer. Get them going. We need to keep warming them up. And then, so they have this thing like on Life Flight that like warms people up or whatever. But the thing is usually they fly a helicopter on top of the building, but they couldn't fly a helicopter on top of the building. They actually had to go to the airport, which is literally behind our home, 30 minutes away. So they had to drive him there. But during that whole time, it was about 45 minutes, I think, of them packing him up. He was responsive. He was like nodding to them, like yes and no, or just like he'd do this like that, like to acknowledge or like blink his eyes, and they knew, they could read him too, and they weren't like his parent. They knew what he wanted or didn't want or whatever. Are you comfortable? Are you whatever? Bringing his temperature up. As soon as they started bringing his temperature up, he was acting 10 times better. It was like, oh my goodness, that was the first time that I felt any hope at all. And you could hear them having discussions outside of the bedroom door on how poorly he was treated. I do not know everything that was said, but I know that they were not taking proper care of my son. So, get him in the Life Flight thing. My husband gets really airsick, like airplane sick, like he will vomit. And so I didn't know what choice to make. I didn't know if I should go on the airplane or if I should stay home with the kids, or what should happen, because you're trying to make it best for them too. So I decided that I would stay home, and my husband we came home and started packing up. We followed the ambulance. My children actually stood outside on the porch. It was like 9 o'clock at this time, and they saw the lights from the Life Flight come overhead for his airplane. And so it was really a hard time. But they got him in the airplane. They got him there. The lady from Life Flight was wonderful. She called me from the Life Flight plane, and she's like, Bobby is doing so great. He's so responsive. He's really, it's been a real encouragement, and just like totally like giving me all these great reports of him. And I was so, so thankful. I am so thankful that he had that time with those ladies. I'm sad that I missed out on that. But I'm so thankful that he was able to have that. So my husband went to the hospital, and when he got to the hospital, they diagnosed him with something. And it changed our world because in our state, so many things have been regulated. Doctors had been not allowed to practice anymore due to the way they were treating certain conditions. And my son apparently now had this condition, which he hadn't prior. So now he has this condition, and they refused anything. They refused to give him any alternative treatments, including a vitamin C drip. They refused. They did want to give him a drug that begins with an R, and I refused that. I brought papers that said that Bobby refused that as well, and that is something that I knew he had wanted to refuse. I knew where he stood on this subject. I knew it 100% where he stood on this subject because he had talked about it so much. So yeah, it was really difficult, and it was really difficult because like as a mom, like I knew different treatments that could happen, and yet we were so far away from that. We weren't it was like we weren't allowed anything, you know? So I think that the doctors really did a good job at the city hospital. He had one nurse that was so caring and so tender. My husband said like that she just did so great, and Bobby responded to her so great. Later on, I ended up writing her a letter of appreciation because like I couldn't be there, and she was there during that time. And I really appreciated that. But I wonder, I'm going to leave this video, I think, as this, and I might talk about like the final hours in a different video. But so many people in so many families went through this feeling of they wanted to help their significant other, their daughter, their son, their loved one, whoever it was, and they were stuck. They were stuck. They weren't able to help them because what they wanted to do was considered illegal. I don't understand where in healthcare that's okay. It's supposed to be healthcare. We're supposed to be caring for the people. Anyway, I'm about ready to run out of time, and I think that's all that I can handle for the day. I'm going to go butcher a pig, not a pig, a cow, because life goes on and we keep chugging along, and I'm going to love on my kids and feed my babies and all that fun stuff that needs to happen. But I wanted to tell this part of the story because I know that so many people are hurting from this, because the after effect of all of this is you're hurting and you're left feeling so confused because you feel like you knew the knowledge of how to help that person, yet you were trapped and you couldn't help that person. But we serve a great God, and God used that, and maybe God is using that in your life, to glorify Him. And we just have to trust in that. And so I hope this video blessed you all, and have a great day.